Chapter 41. Untying the Knot in His Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 41. Untying the Knot in His Heart. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It's fine, Mom. It's just 100,000 yuan. Chu Yunfan said. The current him obviously was not worried about 100,000 yuan. If he wanted to earn money, he would have ways to earn it. He just needed some time. He was used to the old man and the old lady's favoritism. He had long understood that there were things that were useless for him to be angry over. This was because other than his parents and sister, no one would really care if he was angry. Why should he make himself feel bad over such a thing? However, Yang Yayun was not about to give up just like this. She said, I originally wanted to use this 100,000 yuan to buy you a body refining pill so that you would have the chance to enter the martial arts class. Now, it's all gone. Your father and I discussed it on the road. First, we'll mortgage the house and get a loan to buy a body refining pill and a chi nourishment pill. The next year is crucial. Even if you don't enter the martial arts class, it's not a big deal. You can apply to change classes next year as long as your strength can keep up. Turns out that Chu Wencheng and Yang Yayun had already considered it. Even if they had to mortgage the house, they wanted to give Chu Yunfan a chance to be able to fight for next year. Mom, Dad, there's no need for that. You don't have to mortgage the house. It's not worth it. Chu Yunfan hurriedly said. Your mom and I have already discussed it. The college entrance exam is a great opportunity. A person will only get one such chance in their entire life. Even if we have to mortgage our house, we will still buy those pills for you. All these years, most of our money has been spent on Xian. We've not spared you much. If we don't do this, your chances of getting into the martial arts class wouldn't be in danger. Chu Wencheng looked at his son as his heart filled with guilt. As a man, he felt like he had failed. He had not been able to give his wife a good life, and his daughter's illness was incurable. He could not even help his son. Dad, there's no need. If you want me to enter the martial arts class, there's no need for you to mortgage your house. I've long passed the blood renewal stage. Chu Yunfan quickly explained. However, Chu Wencheng and Yang Yayun did not believe him. They thought that Chu Yunfan was trying to comfort them. At this moment, Chu Qingxian, who had been watching from the side, spoke up, Mon, Dad, don't argue anymore. Brother isn't lying to you. Look, he's already in the chi nourishment stage. At this moment, the two of them turned their eyes to Chu Yunfan. Chu Yunfan finally revealed his aura, and the two of them could easily tell that Chu Yunfan had already entered the chi nourishment stage. Because they had also experienced this stage before, they were not unfamiliar with it. When did you break through? After Chu Wencheng's initial joy, he felt even more guilty. He did not even know when his son had broken through to the chi nourishment stage. He had been too negligent as a father. I just did. Don't worry. Not only will I get into the martial arts class, I'll also enter the focus class. Chu Yunfan said confidently. He also felt a little apologetic that he had not told his parents about this the moment it happened. He had wanted to wait until the end of the placement test to give his family a surprise. But before that happened, Chu Qingxian suggested earning money to buy pills for him. Then, his parents wanted to mortgage his house to allow him the chance to cultivate. He felt that he could not hide it anymore. That's great. As expected of my son. Didn't the old lady always say that you don't have any talent, so we can't waste resources on you? When you get into the martial arts class, she'll be shocked. In the future, let's see who still dares look down on you. Yang Yayun said resentfully. This treatment was something that the people in this room were already used to. They had gone through so many years like this. The third elder of the family also gave out 100,000 yuan, but the old lady did not take that away. They are too biased. At the mention of this matter, Yang Yayan was still very angry. The old lady was biased, but there were 3 people in the house. One of them smiled apologetically, while the other 2 acted as if it was none of their business. However, her mood quickly improved. She had planned to mortgage the house and help her son get into the martial arts class so that he could get into a good university in the future. She had not expected her son to give her a surprise. She felt that she could finally hold her head up high. Although her son could not compare to Chu Yuntian, compared to the children of the 3rd family, he was not bad. Maybe even better. Thinking about this, she felt much better. Chu Wencheng was also overjoyed. All these years, because of his daughter's illness, he had no choice but to swallow his anger. He has inevitably wronged his son. Now that he was seeing his son develop well on his own, he felt much better. Okay, Mom. Even without the help of the family, I have already entered the qi nourishment stage. There's no need to be angry. Chu Yunfan took the opportunity to comfort her. All right, So what if they have the help of the family? My son is great too. Yang Yayan's temper came and dissipated quickly. She was not a stingy person, but once this matter involved her son, she could not help but be angry. It was not for herself, but for the injustice against her son. Now that her son had a promising future, she felt proud and her mood improved. Yeah, Mom. Don't be angry over 100,000 yuan. It's not worth it. Chu Qingxian quickly tried to persuade her. Chu Wencheng also took the opportunity to persuade her. His previous position was too awkward. No matter how he tried to persuade her, it was useless. They took turns to persuade her. Soon, Yang Yayan was happy and went out to buy vegetables. Today, she was going to celebrate with her son. Chu Qingxian also returned to her room. Only Chu Wencheng and Chu Yunfan were left in the living room. Sit down. Chu Wencheng said. Chu Yunfan sat opposite him. All these years, it's been hard on you. I'm very glad that you've made such achievements. Chu Wencheng said as he looked at Chu Yunfan. This was the first time that he was speaking his mind. Dad, there's no need to feel aggrieved. Chu Yunfan said. Unlike his mother with her straightforward temper, Chu Wencheng was undoubtedly much more of a silent person. However, from what he knew, his father was not a person who would swallow his pride in the past. However, for the sake of this family, he had been enduring for a long time. Ever so slowly, he had not realized that this attitude had become a habit. Why are we still talking about this? Chu Yunfan said, what's there to talk about being aggrieved? All these years, I've not given you enough. Now, we're even. Let's not talk about the past anymore. Chu Wencheng knew what his son meant and nodded heavily. Okay. You have to work hard in the placement test this time, but remember to take care of yourself. Don't worry, no problem. This time, I'll definitely get into the martial arts class and the focus class. No matter what, I have to elevate my parents' status. Chu Yunfan said with a chuckle. Ha, you brat. For a moment, the living room was filled with the laughter of father and son. Chapter 42. Breakthrough, Qi C Stage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 42. Breakthrough, Qi C Stage. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In her room, Chu Yunfan was sitting cross-legged, his complexion dignified. He manipulated the mighty Eternal Emperor method, moving the true energy within his body and slowly attacking his dantian. As more and more true energy poured into his body, his Qi Si dantian slowly opened up. He had channeled true energy into his dantian these past few days in order to open his Qi Si. If one were to look, one would be able to see that the Godhead inside his body was emitting a dazzling light. However, it was blocked by the mountain river diagram, so no one could see it clearly. To open up a dantian that was originally not there was a painful process, especially when Chu Yunfan's body was much stronger than that of a normal qi nourishment stage cultivator. This process was even more painful. Cold sweat dripped down Chu Yunfan's forehead. Although it was painful, he did not dare move. Otherwise, all of his efforts would have been for naught. Many people took a long time to open their qi, slowly breaking through. Obviously, Chu Yunfan did not have that much time left. There were only 3 days left before the examination. The time he had left was very limited. After an unknown period of time, Chu Yunfan's qi finally opened up. More and more true energy poured into it to support his qi, which gradually stabilized. Chu Yunfan knew that this was not the time to relax yet. From ancient times until now, there had been many instances where the qi would collapse after opening. Thus, he had to be extra careful. However, since his qi had already been opened, everything else would follow naturally. The true energy that had been hidden in various parts of his body began to gather in his qi. Beyond with the qi, the place where true qi gathered, it was much stronger for him to manipulate the true energy than before. Previously, he had to use all his strength to gather true energy into his fists. But now, with the qi, he could attach true energy to every punch. The power of his punches would greatly increase. Not only that, since he could use the qi to freely mobilize his qi, he could also attach it to any part of his body. If the true energy was attached to the feet, the person's jumping ability would be greatly increased. The amazing abilities described in the novels in the past, such as soaring roofs and climbing walls, walking on water, etc., all that came from the utilization of true energy. Chu Yunfan did not know how much time had passed before he finally let out a long breath. It was only now that his qi had completely stabilized and he could move freely. Under normal circumstances, there was no need to be afraid that the qi would suddenly collapse. In reality, if the main purpose of the physical state was to strengthen the cultivation of the physical body, then the qi state, as the name suggested, was actually the process of continuously strengthening the qi. If he could cultivate to the peak of the qi stage, then his qi would truly stabilize. Only then would he be able to cultivate further. If his qi was unstable, he would be rashly cultivating in the energy refinement stage later on. The increase in the amount of true energy would only cause his qi to explode. Modern cultivation theories and cultivation systems had all been verified by countless people. Not only did they refer to the classification methods of ancient civilizations, but they also conducted modern research. Although ancient civilizations far surpassed modern civilizations in terms of cultivation, in terms of thorough research, they were far inferior to modern civilizations. Many of them were segregated out of habit. They did not research why. They knew that that was the process, but did not know why. Even though he could find the correct way to classify the techniques by himself, this process would take too long, and it was not as fast as modern martial arts. There was a reason why the cultivation path that modern society progressed in every 100 years was comparable to thousands of years of an ancient civilization. After breaking through to the qi stage, getting into the elite class shouldn't be a problem anymore. Chu Yunfan mumbled to himself. But I still need to consolidate my qi. I can't relax. There were only 3 days left. He had to make use of the time to break through. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The entire city was immersed in the atmosphere of the exam. Not only number 13 high school, but all the high schools in Kamsi City and Donghua City had set this day as the day for the third-year examination. Even though it could not be compared to the college entrance examinations, the whole city was solemn. Everything gave way for the college entrance examinations, but the atmosphere of this exam was also very intense. Chu Yunfan ate his breakfast early in the morning. After receiving blessings from his parents and sister, he took the bus to school. No matter how many students had taken leave before, they had to appear at today's exam. When they entered the classroom, Gao Hongji, Feng Dang, and Tang Siyu, who were supposed to be on leave, had already turned up. They had applied for leave just for this day. Chu Yunfan's gaze swept over the three of them. As expected, they had not been here for a long time. Their strengths had increased by leaps and bounds, all of them had entered the Qi Si stage. Amongst them, Tang Siyu's aura was the strongest. Although she hit it well, it did not escape his gaze. Other than the three of them, the other students in the other classes had also gotten stronger. In the class, other than him, only the big three had reached the Qi nourishment stage. However, when he looked again today, there were 5 students who were originally only in the internal observation stage that had suddenly broken through to the Qi nourishment stage. As expected, the class placement exam is a big opportunity. Everyone will do their best, and their cultivation level has greatly increased. Chu Yunfan thought to himself. His entrance immediately attracted everyone's attention. At that moment, he was no longer a nobody. After defeating Feng Dang and Song Fei of Class 15 consecutively, his reputation was no less than that of the Big Three. As expected, defeating the strong was the best way to ascend. Other than Feng Dang staring at him maliciously, even Tang Siyu was looking at Chu Yunfan with curiosity. It was obvious that Chu Yunfan's continuous performance had completely exceeded her expectations. Yunfan went to sit beside Gao Hongji. The moment he reached Gao Hongji's side, he patted Chu Yunfan's shoulder. "Haha, kid. You're good. I heard that you taught Feng Dang a good lesson. Well done. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Let him act cool." Gao Hongji looked like he understood him. "However, your improvement is really fast. This time, you should be able to join the focus class. TSK. It's like you've gained enlightenment this month." Gao Hongji looked at Chu Yunfan with a hint of envy in his eyes. Normally speaking, there were not many people who could open their dantian, but once they did, their cultivation would soar. Not long after Chu Yunfan sat down, the homeroom teacher entered. Chapter 43. An outstanding assessment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 43. An outstanding assessment. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When the homeroom teacher came in, he swept a glance over the room and could tell that everyone had arrived. He possessed quite a level of cultivation, so this level of discernment was ordinary for him. Alright, since everyone has arrived, then I will announce that this morning, we'll be testing on various subjects in the liberal arts. Regardless of whether you want to take the liberal arts or martial arts classes, you will have to obtain outstanding results in this aspect. The homeroom teacher said. There is naturally no need to mention the liberal arts class. This time, the placement assessment will directly determine whether you are in the regular class or the focus class. Some students will also have to take martial arts classes. This is also a must. If your goal is the focus class, then you will have to get good marks on the liberal arts exam. The students all nodded their heads. They had long known about this. Since a long time ago, the Federation governments already abandoned the broken model of only emphasizing the liberal arts. Instead, they now emphasized both liberal arts and martial arts. Nowadays, society looked down upon martial artists who only studied the arts or did not have any brains. They were all brawn and had no brains. In the afternoon, you will be taking part in the martial arts assessment. You will get the results this evening. After this assessment, you will have 5 days of vacation. The school will complete the placement of your classes within these 5 days. Alright, go to your exams. Everyone rushed to different classrooms to take the exam according to the arrangement of their seats. This exam was a continuous examination until the end of the exam. If this had been the common era, the students would not have had enough physical strength to last until then. However, for the current students, this was a very simple thing. There was no need for them to divide the exam into a few days. The exams tested them briefly on language, mathematics, ancient seal characters, physics, chemistry, cultivation theory, and so on. Each paper covered an extremely wide range of subjects. A student who could obtain a good evaluation or higher in these subjects was considered a relatively comprehensive all-rounder. A month ago, if Chu Yunfan wanted to obtain good results in all the subjects, it would have been a little difficult. However, now that his body had been improved by the Godhead, his brain seemed to have undergone immense optimizations. These questions were not difficult at all. It was not until noon that he finally finished answering all the questions. Although the results were not out yet, Chu Yunfan estimated it himself. Not only could he get good grades, but he could even get excellent grades. There should be no problem for him to get excellent grades. The current exam had long eliminated the scores from the previous common era. It was now only divided into 4 categories: failed, pass, good, and excellent. However, he knew that the final decision on class assignments was to be made during the martial arts exam in the afternoon. After finishing the exam, Chu Yunfan handed in his exam paper and went out. After a while, Gao Hongji exited the exam hall as well. The two of them decided to go to the cafeteria to have lunch first before preparing for the martial arts exam in the afternoon. Do you know how the exams will go later? Chu Yunfan asked as they ate. The food in the school cafeteria was not exactly delicious, but it was enough to fill one's stomach. I've asked around. It should be the same as last year's Year 3 examination. Basically, it was all done in the virtual network according to the recommendations. It should be virtual combat. In the end, the better your basic performance, the higher your score will be. I don't know exactly how the score is calculated, but as far as I know, it's not just dependent on your individual skill, but also on the actual combat situation. Gao Hongji said. In this field, he had more connections. Chu Yunfan nodded. No wonder Lu Yushu was practicing the devilish tiger punch before the class allocation assessment. There was indeed a reason. Noon soon passed. Many students had sat around the entire afternoon, waiting for the final assessment. It also determined whether they could pass the final class allocation assessment. The third-year students all gathered in one training room. Then, they were given special virtual glasses. Chu Yunfan put on the glasses. Suddenly, his vision went black. He had entered the virtual space. This was software specially developed for the examination. In this place, no matter what strength they had in the real world would temporarily translate into this space. Originally, if martial artists above the Chi Si stage wanted to project their real strength in the virtual network, they would need to spend money. Now, they could temporarily do it and they did not have to spend money. However, once they exited this software and left this exam, they would return to their original state. The Year 3 examination of Calm Ocean City's No. 13 High School is ready to begin. Chu Yunfan, are you ready to start the assessment? Yes. Chu Yunfan nodded. Immediately, a figure appeared in front of him. This figure's face could not be seen clearly, but there was an obvious valiant aura on his body. It was a virtual martial artist. Before Chu Yunfan could even react, this virtual martial artist attacked him. He had good technique. He threw a punch at Chu Yunfan. However, Chu Yunfan was not afraid at all. This virtual martial artist looked aggressive, but in fact, the figure was only equivalent to someone in the blood renewal stage. This was also the basic line to test whether one had the qualifications to enter the martial arts class. If one had not even reached the blood renewal stage, then one would definitely have to go to the martial arts class. Chu Yunfan took a step forward, then shot out like a bullet, directly connecting with the opponent's fist. Bam! With a loud muffled groan, this virtual martial artist's entire arm was shattered by Chu Yunfan's punch and he tried to retreat. Chu Yunfan did not let off. He took a step forward and kicked. The virtual martial artist was kicked to the ground by Chu Yunfan and could not move. Chu Yunfan has won. Do you want to enter the next level? At this moment, a clear and melodious notification sounded in Chu Yunfan's ears. The enemies in the second level were 3 virtual martial artists in the blood renewal stage. They appeared at the same time. If the first level was only a test to see if they had reached the bottom line of the martial arts class, then now it was a test to see if they had reached the level of an elite of the regular class. To be able to defeat these 3 virtual martial artists in the blood renewal stage, one was already considered an elite of the regular class. It was very obvious that even if there were 3 virtual martial artists in the blood renewal stage, they were still not a match for the current Chu Yunfan. He easily defeated these 3 virtual martial artists in the blood renewal stage. Very quickly, he entered the 3rd level. The next martial artist that appeared jumped to the Qi nourishment stage. Chu Yunfan also easily defeated this Qi nourishment stage martial artist. Moreover, his speed was very fast. This virtual martial artist was defeated by Chu Yunfan without having any chance to fight back. Chu Yunfan's astonishing speed of clearing the levels attracted the attention of many invigilators. Chapter 44. The attention of all the invigilators. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 44. The attention of all the invigilators. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. As Chu Yunfan easily passed the assessment like a hot knife passing through butter, he attracted the attention of many invigilators with his fast completion speed. Through a computer, they could monitor the situation of the assessment of their students on the virtual network. Chu Yunfan was not the only one who was fast in the assessment, but all of them were good seedlings in their hearts. Basically, they had already become very famous within their first 2 years. However, Chu Yunfan was different. Although he had become somewhat famous recently, he was still unknown to many of the teachers, especially the teachers of other classes. This student passed the assessment so quickly. Amazing. 3 virtual martial artists in the blood renewal stage. Even a Qi nourishment stage martial artist wouldn't be able to get rid of them so easily. I think he's that student from class 11. I remember hearing about him. He's a newly rising star pupil. I just checked. His name is Chu Yunfan. Whether it's in liberal arts or martial arts, he wasn't very outstanding before. However, in the past month, he seemed to have burst out from his cocoon. Whether it's liberal arts or martial arts, his results have improved by leaps and bounds. Recently, there have been many students whose results have improved, but it's rare for them to grow to this extent. Another good seedling from the focus class. On the monitor screen, Chu Yunfan's current opponent was in the Qi nourishment stage. This time, his opponent is in the Qi nourishment stage. I reckon it won't be so easy for him to defeat this opponent. Although he's only a virtual martial artist, to most ordinary people, it would be really difficult. The first part is nothing. It just proves that he is worthy of entering the focus class. However, the focus class is divided into different grades. Now is the time to truly test his strength. Look, they're fighting. At this moment, Chu Yunfan did not know that his movements had attracted the attention of many invigilators. In front of him, there was an additional Qi nourishment stage virtual martial artist. The time that he had spent on the virtual network could not be considered short, but this was the first time he was fighting with a virtual martial artist on the virtual network. He could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Modern technology was truly magical. With the existence of virtual martial artists, it could allow those who did not have any fighting experience to quickly gain skills. Boom! This virtual martial artist in the Qi nourishment stage attacked. No expression could be seen on his blurry face, but whether it was his speed or strength, he was much stronger than the virtual martial artist in the blood renewal stage. The virtual martial artist was not at the peak of the Qi nourishment stage, but he was not at the entry level either. To be able to defeat him, one would be eligible to enter the focus classes. If it was before, he might have posed some threat to Chu Yunfan. However, ever since Chu Yunfan had stepped into the Qi Si stage, all the true energy in his body had condensed into his Qi Si. His power had doubled, and so had his strength. Many invigilators watched Chu Yunfan through the monitor screen, wanting to see how he would deal with this virtual martial artist. From the process of this battle, they could at least figure out Chu Yunfan's martial skill level. From this, they could also deduce many things. However, Chu Yunfan did not do as they had expected. When faced with the Qi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artist, Chu Yunfan only turned his head slightly to dodge this attack. Then, he clenched his fists and threw it out like a long spear. It hit the chest of the Qi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artist, immediately sending him flying. Just as the Qi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artist was sent flying and was in mid-air, Chu Yunfan swept his leg over at an even more astonishing angle. Like a razor, it swept across the body of the virtual martial artist. In an instant, the virtual martial artist burst into a ball of light and disappeared. From the beginning to the end, he had only used 2 moves, and he had defeated the Qi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artist cleanly and swiftly. That was not the kind of intense battle that many invigilators had wanted to see. The Qi Nourishment Stage is not his limit. This emergence is a bit exaggerated. Could it be that he has already broken through to the Qi Si stage? If that's the case, then that would be very surprising. Qi Si stage is part of the elite of the focus classes. Have you all noticed? His movements are clean and neat. It's obvious that he doesn't lack combat experience. This doesn't seem to be the experience gained from virtual combat. Without experiencing real combat, it's impossible for him to have that kind of imposing manner. Many teachers had noticed the imposing manner of Chu Yunfan's attacks. It did not seem to be the kind of attitude that could be gained from virtual combat. The doubts in their hearts became even deeper. Chu Yunfan wins. Does he wish to enter the next level? Chu Yunfan nodded. Yes. After his last few battles, the little bit of nervousness that he originally felt had disappeared without a trace. On the contrary, he could only feel his blood boiling. The 4th level had 3 virtual martial artists in the Qi Nourishment Stage. This test had once again got even harder. The 3rd level was to test whether the students had the qualifications to enter the martial arts classes focus classes. Those who could pass the 4th level were already qualified. This was just a test to feel out the elites among them. Those who could pass would be considered elites. To defeat such a lineup was only possible for those who had entered the Qi Si stage. Even for students who were in the Qi Si stage, this level would prove difficult to pass. Chu Yunfan had already figured out the rules of this class dividing test. By passing the many levels, the student would be sorted by levels. This assessment was not just to test one's physical fitness, it was also to test one's martial skill level. Everything depended on one's overall performance in the virtual reality battle. And one's performance in the virtual reality battle would correlate the division of classes in the future, as well as the degree of inclination of the school's resources. The 3 Qi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artists surrounded Chu Yunfan. If he had been an ordinary Qi Si stage martial artist, he would have probably gotten nervous. However, Chu Yunfan, who had been fighting with Lu Yushu every day during this period of time, was not nervous at all. Although Lu Yushu was in the Qi Nourishment Stage and had suppressed her strength, and although she was just one person, the pressure she had given him was far stronger than the 3 virtual martial artists combined. As Chu Yunfan passed another level, more and more teachers came to watch the monitor screen. This was because most of the students had already been eliminated or were still struggling, but there was no suspense anymore. There were not many students who could pass through the levels like a hot knife passing through butter. If he passes this round, he will be considered an elite. No doubt about it. But I think it will be a little difficult for him. If he's in the Qi Si stage, he'll be fine. But if he's only in the Qi Nourishment Stage, I'm afraid he won't be able to pass. Now we will see his martial skill level. Previously, he relied on his physical fitness to charge through the levels. At this time, 3 Chi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artists simultaneously pounced at him from 3 different directions. Chapter 45. Passing 5 levels in a row. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 45. Passing 5 levels in a row. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. All the invigilators wanted to see Chu Yunfan's martial skill level. But to their disappointment, Chu Yunfan still would not show his level. 3 Chi Nourishment Stage martial artists were not enough to make him reveal his true strength. He received all the attacks from the 3 Chi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artists. No matter how astonishing the attacks of these 3 Chi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artists were, he easily blocked them all. After a while, Chu Yunfan seemed to tire of this scene. He let out a loud shout and then attacked like thunder. It was as if he had split himself into 3 and he directly bombarded the 3 Chi Nourishment Stage virtual martial artists. The 3 virtual martial artists were sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. They were unable to move. After a while, they turned into rays of light and disappeared. This was the virtual network system judging that their injuries were too severe and they had lost. At this moment, all the invigilators frowned slightly because they still had not seen what they wanted to see. However, they all came to the same conclusion. This student's physical fitness is simply too good to be true. Forget the Chi Nourishment Stage, even the physical fitness of those in the Chi C stage should not be this strong. It's very rare to be able to reach this stage just by relying on physical fitness unless it's someone with extraordinary talent. That's true. There are actually many with outstanding talent, but those with extraordinary physical talent are very rare. This is quite interesting. Let's see how far he can go. There's no question that he'll be admitted into the focus class. At this moment, most of the students of class 11 had already finished their exams. They had all failed sooner or later. As time passed, the number of students decreased. Soon, there were only a few students who were confirmed to have reached the Chi Nourishment Stage. Suddenly, one of the Chi Nourishment Stage students whipped off his glasses. This is impossible. Fighting one in the Chi Nourishment Stage is already the limit. We can't beat 3 of them at once. This student could not help but complain. Defeating a Chi Nourishment Stage meant that he had reserved a position in one of the focus classes. But one were to reach this step, who would not want to take it one step further. The focus classes were also divided into different grades. In them were outstanding individuals who stood high above others, as well as the ordinary and mediocre ones. After him, some other students who had already entered the Chi Nourishment Stage withdrew one after another. They had all been defeated at the same level. After all, they could deal with virtual martial artists who were at the same Chi Nourishment Stage as them. This was because these virtual martial artists were built on relatively mediocre data. They were not built using the elites in the Chi Nourishment Stage as templates. But even so, these students who had just broken through had already done their best, let alone fighting 3 at once. As of this moment, there were only 4 people left who were still taking the test. Besides the big 3, Chu Yunfan had also unexpectedly persevered. Not bad. A pretty good seedling. Qin Wu nodded slightly. Chu Yunfan's performance had completely exceeded his expectations. It was far better than the best situation he had imagined. After passing the 4th level, Chu Yunfan smoothly entered the 5th. The opponent on the 5th level was just one person, a virtual martial artist at the 1st level of the Chi C stage. Chu Yunfan's expression became a little more serious. The Chi C stage and the physical stage were completely different concepts. In terms of physical fitness, it was not that strong. But a Chi C stage martial artist would be able to attach true energy to his body. This was enough to make a Chi C stage martial artist far more destructive than a martial artist who was just the physical stage, even though their physical fitness was on par with each other. Tap, tap, tap. tap. This Chi C stage virtual martial artist came flying toward him almost the second he manifested. He took one step at a time. It looked slow, but in fact, he was extremely fast. If one were to imbue the sole of their feet with true energy, it would make them twice as fast as before. Tap. 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 In an instant, he was right on top of Chu Yunfan. Ferocious tiger's heart plow. The virtual martial artist shouted out loud and threw a punch directly toward Chu Yunfan's chest. This cultivation of the devilish tiger punches had actually reached the pinnacle of perfection. The virtual network was truly magical. The explosive sound caused by true energy tearing through the air made the entire scene quake. Devilish tiger punches again. Come. Chu Yunfan was not panicked. On the contrary, he only laughed loudly. Then, he also threw a devilish tiger punch toward that virtual martial artist's punch. Bang! The two fists collided. From it came not the muffled groan of when flesh and bone collide, but the explosive sound of true chi colliding. When their two fists met, he had to admit that the cultivation of this virtual martial artist was obviously much stronger than the chi nourishment stage martial artists from before. But no matter, under the collision of this punch, his arm did not falter. Instead, the virtual martial artist had to retreat to ward off Chu Yunfan's punch that was full of true energy. What great strength! He's actually stronger than a martial artist at the first level of the Chi C stage. Many invigilators cried out in surprise. Chu Yunfan was clearly stronger than they had expected. He has already stepped into the Chi C stage. This kind of prodigy should have been nurtured long ago. Why have I never heard of him before? Discovering this now is not too late. There's still about a year left before the college entrance exams. There's no need to fret. As the invigilators exclaimed in surprise, through the monitor, they saw Chu Yunfan begging his counterattack. The virtual martial artist was continuously pushed back by Chu Yunfan's punches whilst Chu Yunfan did not back down. With great difficulty, the virtual martial artist finally managed to stabilize his body, but Chu Yunfan had already pounced toward him. Luring the tiger. Chu Yunfan threw a punch. This virtual martial artist had no time to counter and could only block the attack. However, he was once again beaten back by Chu Yunfan. Since losing the first attack, there was no possibility of gaining back his ground. Chu Yunfan's various attacks came like a storm. Chu Yunfan had never fought with a Chi C stage martial artist before. When he was fighting Lu Yushu previously, although she had suppressed her cultivation, she could not be considered a true Chi C stage martial artist. He treated this assessment as a rare opportunity to increase his actual combat experience. Against a flurry of devilish tiger punches, the virtual martial artist was unable to retaliate. Everything was under Chu Yunfan's control. The invigilators saw this and did not know how to react. They had invigilated many assessments in the past and noticed when students were nervous. They had also seen before where students were not nervous, but this was the first time they were seeing someone treat the assessment as an actual battle. Again. Ferocious tiger's heart plow. Chu Yunfan shouted and punched the virtual martial artist's body. The virtual martial artist was sent flying backward. And with a burst of light, he disappeared in mid-air. Chapter 46. The attention of the entire class. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 46. The attention of the entire class. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. After the 5th level was the 6th. The 6th level was the same as the levels before. The number of opponents increased from 1 to 3. Chu Yunfan's expression finally became solemn. This was different from the previous levels. Not only had the number of opponents in the 6th level increased to 3, but all of them were clearly much stronger than the one before. They were at the peak of the first level of the Chi C stage. At the same time, He also heard a voice in his ear telling him that the 6th level was the final level of the martial arts assessment. By now, Chu Yunfan had already reserved a position in the martial arts stream focus class. He was even considered one of the elites. Frankly speaking, he had completed his goal, but he still could not quell the fire burning within him. He wanted to know where his limit was. Even with a first-level Chi C stage opponent, he could not test where his bottom line was. But now, he could fight with all his might. The 3 first-level Chi C stage virtual martial artists slowly surrounded him and launched a simultaneous attack. This was clearly more difficult to deal with, and they had even combined attacks. Flowing wave of welcome. One of the virtual martial artists charged forward. He did not employ the devilish tiger punches, but used a set of techniques called fluid crane punches. This was also one of the basic martial techniques that many people learned. It was different from the devilish tiger punches' domineering fighting style. The movements of the fluid crane punches were more elegant, but its power was not inferior in the slightest. Chu Yunfan left no room for the virtual martial artist to land his attack. Ferocious tiger's heart plow. Bam! With a crisp and loud sound, the fists of both sides collided. The virtual martial artist who used the fluid crane punch was pushed back a step, while Chu Yunfan's body swayed slightly. This virtual martial artist was clearly much stronger than the one in the previous level. At the same time, the other 2 opponents flanked Chu Yunfan from his left and right. Their attacks came in like a tide, trying to drown Chu Yunfan. Chu Yunfan held his ground. He used his devilish tiger punches to block all of the attacks. The virtual martial artist who had been pushed back by Chu Yunfan too rejoined the siege. For a moment, Chu Yunfan was surrounded. His situation seemed to have reached a critical level. Wonderful, wonderful. In front of the monitor screen, an invigilator clapped his hands and shouted. The devilish tiger punches focuses on offense and has a clear weakness in regards to defense. It'd be fine in a 1-on-1 situation. But in a group battle, a weak defense can become a great flaw. However, Chu Yunfan has taken a different approach. He's using offensive moves instead of defensive moves but is still somehow able to defend flawlessly. Amazing, amazing. Many invigilators also noticed this subtlety. The fist technique that focused on offense was used by Chu Yunfan to defend flawlessly. This in itself meant that Chu Yunfan's research on the devilish tiger punches had already reached a certain level. He has reached the level of perfection. Cultivation base at the first level of the Chi C stage, and the devilish tiger punches at the level of perfection is already considered great. However, very soon, another invigilator realized that something was amiss. Although one could attach true energy to their fists and feet upon reaching the Chi C stage, which could greatly increase their strength, doing so would consume a great amount of true energy. The Chi C stage was the beginning line of this ability. Generally speaking, a student in the first level of the Chi C stage would not be able to expend their true energy too many times during a battle. It would not be long before their true energy would be exhausted. However, Chu Yunfan was fighting 3 people at once and was using offensive moves as a defense. It was equal to using up 3 portions of true energy at one go. A normal first-level Chi stage cultivator should have exhausted all the true energy in his body by now. However, Chu Yunfan showed no signs of giving out anytime soon. On the contrary, he seemed to be getting stronger and stronger as the battle went on. Not only is his strength much greater than the average person, his true energy is also much denser than those at the same realm. This is a rare talent, the invigilator could not help but exclaim. If this kind of person was born back in the ancient times, he would be considered a natural cultivation genius. The results of other people's painstaking training was merely the starting point for this kind of person. This attracted the attention of invigilators toward Chi Yunfan. At this moment, there were only 4 people left taking the assessment. Clearly, they had attracted everyone's attention. Judging by the duration of the examination, everyone knew that the four of them should have entered the final level of the assessment. Although they all knew that the four of them would be entering the focus classes of the martial arts class stream, it was inevitable that people would make comparisons. Among the four, who would be able to hold out longer? Or rather, who would be able to pass the level? It was not like they had never seen a similar situation before. In previous years, even those from the focus classes would not be able to pass this final level. Basically, these four were the elites among the elites. However, there had always been 3 giants in the class. Now plus Chu Yunfan, there were 4. However, among these giants, who was stronger? Neither of the 4 moved for a long while. Suddenly someone jumped. It was the class monitor, Feng Dang. The expression on his face was unsightly. It was obvious that the results of his test were unsatisfactory. He had failed in the final level. When Feng Dang opened his eyes and discovered that he was the first person to be eliminated out of the 4, his mood became even worse. He looked at Chu Yunfan with an especially unfriendly gaze. If it was not for Instructor Qin Wu who was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey, there was really a possibility that he would have attacked Chu Yunfan. Ever since he began to notice Chu Yunfan's existence, he had suffered all kinds of defeats. Not a single good thing had come out of it. Chu Yunfan was like a nemesis that had been sent by the heavens, making him gnash his teeth in hatred. Not long after, another person withdrew from the assessment. This person was none other than Gao Hongji. He had also failed the final level. Defeating that first level Qi Si cultivator was already his limit. Then, the number of opponents grew to 3, and there were advanced versions. This was beyond his ability. After all, he had just broken through not too long ago. He was originally in a bad mood, but when he saw that Feng Dang had obviously been defeated before him, his mood instantly improved. And when Feng Dang saw Gao Hongji's obvious and undisguised mockery, his mood instantly dropped even lower. He wished that he could step on his face. Gao Hongji mocked Feng Dang for a moment, and then he turned his gaze to Chu Yunfan and Tang Xiu. His eyes flashed with a glint that was completely different from his usual. Chu Yunfan's performance was completely out of his expectations. He had not expected Chu Yunfan to be able to reach this level. This brother of mine is extraordinary. The gazes of the entire stadium were all focused on the remaining 2 people. Would their class be completely wiped out? Chapter 47. The division assessment had ended. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 47. The division assessment had ended. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At this moment, Chu Yunfan did not know that he was being watched by the entire class. He had even become the hope of the entire class. Especially for Coach Qin Wu, it was even more so. The passing rate of the last level in the past few years has been very low. Not many of even those in the martial arts stream had passed. When they were completely annihilated, the entire scene would be quite ugly. At this time, Chu Yunfan was facing the indiscriminate bombardment of 3 virtual martial artists at the peak of the first level of the Qi Si state. Each of them used different sets of martial arts, and surprisingly, they were not the same as one another. They attacked together from 3 different angles. Regardless of whether it was speed or strength, none of the previous virtual martial artists could compare to these 3 at the first level of the Qi Si stage. Although he was confident that he could handle any one of them, when the 3 of them attacked at the same time, he could not help but feel a little flustered. This time, he did not hold back anymore. He used his perfected devilish tiger punches to block the 3 of them. He was unaware that his performance was already quite shocking to many of the invigilators. He was able to block the 3 opponents in a 1.3 without being defeated. L.RG. In terms of being in the same state, it was indeed very shocking. However, Chu Yunfan felt that it was not enough. Just blocking 3 people was not enough. The true energy in his body was almost endless and was much denser than that of an ordinary person's. Then, he completely unleashed it. Under this kind of situation, Chu Yunfan displayed the perfected devilish tiger punches. It was as if he had transformed into an unrivaled demonic tiger and his ferocious might soared toward the sky. Pow! Pow! He threw out 2 consecutive punches and forced 2 of the virtual martial artists who were pressing forward to retreat. Immediately after, all the muscles in his body tensed up. He gathered his true chi into one spot and threw out another punch. King of the Jungle! Chu Yunfan shouted. One of the virtual martial artists took a direct hit. His entire body was instantly sent flying, and with a flash of light, he disappeared. This scene shocked the invigilators who were watching the monitor screen. Damn, what did I just see? King of the Jungle. He actually used the King of the Jungle and suffered no backlash. How strong is his physical body? One invigilator exclaimed in surprise. The last move in the devilish tiger punches, the King of the Jungle, was only used by those in the Chi C stage. When a martial artist in the Chi C stage used it, it would not be like a martial artist in the physical stage whose bones would be broken by God knows how many times over. However, it still could not be used so simply. The Chi C stage was just the minimum standard to use the King of the Jungle. Also, did you notice that his devilish tiger punches has already broken away from the restrictions and has a concept? It has clearly stepped into the realm of perfection. Are students nowadays so powerful? Not even all of us teachers have perfected the devilish tiger punches, right? Some invigilators exclaimed. As they discussed this, Chu Yunfan had already begun his next move. Previously, when Chu Yunfan had used the King of the Jungle, he had broken his ribs. However, now, he only felt his chest stiffen and he instantly recovered. His current physical body was much stronger than before. But Chu Yunfan still did not relax in the slightest. He threw out another killing move. King of the Jungle. This move struck one of the 2 remaining virtual martial artists. After throwing out one King of the Jungle, another followed with almost no pause in between. This was an extremely great burden on the body. However, when Chu Yunfan executed it, he did not struggle at all. A fist flew forward. Pow! A second virtual martial artist was instantly killed and turned into nothingness without any suspense. Chu Yunfan had cultivated the mighty Eternal Emperor method. The condition of his body was already much stronger than many others. In addition to his devilish tiger punches, which had achieved perfection, it could bring out his powerful cultivation base to the maximum. Even though he and his opponent were both at the first level of the Chi C stage, the difference in their cultivation bases were miles apart. Chu Yunfan was fast. At this time, the last virtual martial artist left had just stabilized himself. He pounced mercilessly, but how could he block Chu Yunfan, who was already at full power? His formidable strength, coupled with the perfect devilish tiger punches, made the current Chu Yunfan a super god of killing who blocked and destroyed people. Pow! 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 In less than 3 moves, Chu Yunfan broke through all the defenses of the last virtual martial artist and pushed him into a corner. Then, Chu Yunfan shouted, "King of the Jungle." He mobilized all the strength and true energy in his body and rained punches onto the body of this virtual martial artist whose defenses had been broken through and could not defend himself at all. Bam! The virtual martial artist let out a muffled groan and his entire body burst into a ray of light. He disappeared from the examination hall. At this time, the true energy in Chu Yunfan's body was just barely exhausted. He had far surpassed an ordinary martial artist at the first level of the Chi C state. At this moment, only a few of the invigilators who were staring at the monitor screen had reacted. Chu Yunfan's attacks had only lasted for a short span of 10 breaths and his outburst instantly killed 3 Chi C stage virtual martial artists in succession. The situation, which looked like they were evenly matched, was instantly reversed and rewritten. Seeing this scene, some of the invigilators could only mutter, "This child's talent is immeasurable." The sound of passing the test echoed in Chu Yunfan's ears. He opened his eyes. Everywhere he looked, everyone was staring at him wide-eyed. To be more precise, they were staring at him and Tang Xiu, who was not far away from him. At this moment, everyone's test had already ended. Only he and Tang Xiu were left. At this moment, Qin Wu, who was not far away, walked over and said, "How was it? Did you pass the last level?" Everyone was looking at Chu Yunfan with concern. Chu Yunfan did not hide anything and said openly, "I passed. The results would be out soon anyway." "Good job." Qin Wu only said 2 words, but the smile on his face was obvious. "Amazing." Gao Hongji gave Chen Yunfan a thumbs up. He had also fought with those 3 virtual martial artists, so he knew how difficult it was to deal with them. It was difficult to even defeat one of them. Chu Yunfan had defeated 3 of them and passed the test. In the distance, the expression on Feng Daying's face became even darker. Everyone's gaze turned to look at the last student, Tang Xiu. Not long after Chu Yunfan withdrew from the assessment, Tang Xiu also withdrew. To everyone's surprise, Tang Xiu, who had always been on par with Gao Hongji and Feng Daying, actually passed the last level. In an instant, she had surpassed Gao Hongji and Feng Daying and was on par with Chu Yunfan. Chu Yunfan clenched his fists slightly. The division assessment was finally over. Although the results had not been announced yet, there was no doubt that he was in the focus class of the martial arts stream. His efforts over the past month had not been in vain. However, he knew that this was only the beginning for him. This was just one step forward on his path to seeking Tao. Chapter 48. Iron-Feathered Eagle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 48. Iron-Feathered Eagle. After everyone had finished the assessment, the results of the assessment were quickly released. In this modern age, the speed of marking papers was very fast. Chu Yunfan also received his exam results very quickly. On a piece of paper, it was written that he had achieved excellent results in the liberal arts and full marks in the martial arts. He was placed into the focus classes of the martial arts stream according to the automatic ranking of the computer. However, there were 2 focus classes in number 13 high school. As for which focus class, that would depend on the final division from the school. However, that was just the difference between the final classes. This time, the liberal arts and martial arts class assessment had finally come to an end. According to their respective strengths, they were divided into the liberal arts stream and the martial arts stream. Among them, only about 1/3 had entered the martial arts stream, while the remaining 2/3 entered the liberal arts stream. This did not mean that there was no hope for those in the liberal arts stream. On the contrary, those who were divided in the liberal arts stream would be able to achieve success and fame in the end. Human society valued both liberal arts and martial arts. This did not mean that only martial artists had the opportunity to stand out. The great scientists of human society were respected wherever they went. Their contributions to human society were no less than those of powerful martial artists. For human society, only by placing equal emphasis on liberal and martial arts, and by developing science and martial arts together, could cultivation be developed healthily. Besides Chu Yunfan of class 11, 8 other people were admitted to the focus class of the martial arts stream. This result was neither explosive nor bad. It was just an ordinary result. Gao Hongji, Tang Xiu, and Feng Daying, the original Big Three, were naturally admitted into the martial arts stream easily. After receiving their report cards, they were given a holiday. This time, they were given a 5-day holiday. The school would also take advantage of this period to properly arrange the students into their classes. Chu Yunfan returned home. At this time, his sister, Chu Qingxian, was doing her streaming in her room. Meanwhile, his parents were still at work and had yet to return. Chu Yunfan turned on the television. In the last month, he had devoted all of his attention to cultivation. It had been a long time since he had watched television. The television of the Kunlun era no longer had a large screen. Instead, it projected a 3D projection through the top of a box. It felt like he was there in person. It was much more vivid than before. As soon as he turned on the TV, he landed on the news channel. Immediately, a huge vicious bird appeared in the projection. Although it was only a projection and its size was only as tall as a real person's, its fierce aura seemed to penetrate through the screen. An iron-feathered eagle. Chu Yunfan recognized the vicious bird in the projection. He had learned about it in biology class. It was a beast native to Earth and was a very powerful and vicious bird. It looked like an eagle, but its body was much bigger than an eagle's. It had a wingspan of more than 50 meters and it was covered in feathers that looked like gold and iron. Hundreds of years ago, it posed a great threat to mankind. Hundreds of years ago, the situation of mankind was far less stable than it is now. Not only were they fighting on the battlefields of Kunlun, but they had also lost the only colony they had. On Earth's own land, the native ferocious beasts that had grown up on Earth led countless beast hordes to continuously encroach upon human territory. Among those king-level ferocious beasts, there was this iron-feathered eagle. Bullets could not penetrate the protection of its feathers. Even the most advanced fighter jets missiles at that time could not hurt it. In the end, they had to use tactical nuclear bombs to finally heavily injure the iron-feathered eagle and force it to retreat. The situation at that time was already extremely dangerous. Under the leadership of this iron-feathered eagle, countless fierce beasts almost broke through the defense line of a city. This afternoon, an iron-feathered eagle suddenly appeared 50,000 meters above our city. Fortunately, it was repelled by the Federal Army stationed in our city. Next, let us interview the officers and soldiers of the 15th Regiment who had driven away the iron-feathered eagle with their mecha. In the news projection, the reporter said. Hundreds of years ago, the human air force only had expensive fighter jets. But now, the human race had conquered the sky, and the main armored force of the human race had long been replaced with mecha. In the past, the iron-feathered eagle could only be repelled with tactical nuclear bombs. But now, an officer of a flight unit could drive it away with a mecha. It was clear how much the strength of the human race had improved over the last few hundred years. At this moment, the door opened and Chu Qingxian came out in her wheelchair. Big brother, you're back. Did you pass the test today? Chu Qingxian asked with a concerned and expectant look on her face. Of course. Aren't I your big brother? As he spoke, Chu Yunfan handed the report card to Chu Qingxian. Huh, you're amazing. I told you that you're amazing and you would definitely pass. Chu Qingxian said with a smile. In fact, after Chu Yunfan had revealed his qi nourishment stage cultivation, there was not much suspense left. However, until she saw the report card, she still did not feel at ease. At this moment, the door of the room opened and two figures walked in one after another. They were his father, Chu Wencheng, and his mother, Yang Yayun. Dad, Mom, you're back. Chu Qingxian said excitedly as she raised her head. Yes. What are you so happy about? Chu Wencheng could not help but ask. Mom, Dad, big brother have passed the exam. He got an excellent score in liberal arts and full marks in martial arts. He got into the focus class of the martial arts stream. Chu Qingxian said quickly. Let me see, let me see. Yang Yayun took the report card and read it again and again as if she could not get enough of it. I told you my son could do it. Yang Yayun's face was full of joy. She held the report card tightly and refused to let it go. Beside her, Chu Wencheng's face was also full of joy and pride. However, he was a father, so he was not as direct as Yang Yayun, who was a mother. I think the old man and the old lady will have nothing to say. Even if they don't like it, my son will be entering the martial arts stream. And it's an important class. Yang Yayin's expression was both happy and proud. Alright, go get ready. We're going to Yuntian's birthday party later. Let's go change. Chu Wenqing said at this moment. Let's go and change. Yang Yayin originally had not wanted to attend this party that was disguised as Chu Yuntian's birthday party. It was just a way for her brother and sister-in-law to show off their children. But now that Chu Yunfan showed promise and had gotten into the martial arts stream, the focus class on top of that, she was naturally in a much better mood. She also wanted to let others see that her son was not useless. Chu Yunfan went back to his room and changed into a set of clothes. It was not particularly grand. He just changed his martial arts suit into his regular clothes. He wore a white T-shirt on top, a pair of jeans, and a pair of canvas shoes. He looked like a bright boy. In his mind, it was just a birthday dinner. What was the need to dress up? Chapter 49. Who could show off better? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 49. Who could show off better? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. After Chu Yunfan's family changed their clothes, they immediately left for the party. Dad, Mom, where are we going to eat today? Chu Qingxian said excitedly. Because it was inconvenient due to her legs, she did not go out very often, especially with her family. We're going to eat at Meiwei Restaurant. Your uncle has already booked a table. Chu Wenqing said. He's really generous. It said that a meal at Meiwei Restaurant costs at least 10,000 yuan. If he's so rich, he should pay us back our money. He owes our family hundreds of thousands, but he has not said anything about paying back. Yang Yayun could not help but say unhappily. Come on, let's go. Meiwei was a restaurant located in the downtown area, the most prosperous area. Although it was expensive to eat here, there was still a constant stream of people. After getting out of the cab, Chu Yuxuan's family walked to the square in front of Meiwei. Although Meiwei was built with modern materials, it gave off an antique vibe, like a small courtyard in Jiangnan. Second brother, second sister-in-law, you're here. Suddenly, just as Chu Yunfan and his family approached, the sound of a greeting came from not far away. Chu Yunfan looked up and saw a couple with a young man walking over in large strides. This couple looked to be about 30 years old. The man's brows were somewhat similar to Chu Wenqing's, while the woman's face was pretty, but there was a hint of pride on her face. The two of them walked over quickly. The young man behind them looked to be about the same age as Chu Yunfan. Even his appearance was somewhat similar, but there was a hint of reluctance on his face. This family was none other than Chu Yunfan's third uncle, Chu Wenxuan, and his third aunt, Lu Silin. The person behind them was none other than his cousin, Chu Yunfei. Third uncle, third aunt. Hello. Chu Yunfan and Chu Qingxian greeted them in unison. Second uncle, second aunt. Chu Yunfei greeted Chu Yunfan's parents. It's Yunfan and Xian. It's been a while since we last saw each other. They've grown taller. Chu Yunxian said with a smile. Exactly. Yunfan looks much better. His school results should be much better as well, right? He's not like our Yunfei, who only managed to get into one of the focus classes of the martial arts stream after half a day of exams. Lu Silin said regretfully, however, her face was full of pride. How did she in any way look regretful? Chu Yuntian, Chu Yunfan, and Chu Yunfei, these three cousins, had been born in the same year. It was just a difference of a few months. Chu Yunfan's family had long gotten used to this, especially Chu Yunfan. He had long known that his third aunt, Lu Silin, was good at showing off. Yeah, our Yunfan is also not good. Nothing. He barely managed to get into a focus class of the martial arts stream. Not bad. Yang Yenyun immediately replied. What? How is that possible? Lu Silin cried out in surprise. She quickly covered her mouth and said with a face full of embarrassment, "Second sister. In law, I didn't mean that. Your Yunfan was admitted to the focus class of the martial arts stream. There were no signs of this happening at all." Yang Yayan's words were not only unbelievable to Lu Silin, but also to Chu Wenxuan and Chu Yunfei. They knew that Yunfan did not have any talent in cultivation. How could he have suddenly exploded without any warning and then enter the martial arts stream? He hid it. We always told him not to be a show-off. Don't be too high profile. Let everyone just see him. Just get into the martial arts stream. Yang Yayan said with a smile. She felt extremely happy in her heart. Lu Silin could never climb above her big brothers Chu Yuntian, so she always stepped on Chun Yunfan. She had been unhappy for a long time, but she had gotten a chance to fight back. Although Lu Silin and Chu Wenxuan found it unbelievable, they did not think that Yang Yayan would lie. Firstly, they did not think that she was that kind of person. Secondly, it would be too easily exposed. Whether he really got into the martial arts stream, especially the focus classes, it would not be much of a secret. They would find out once they asked around. Therefore, they all looked at Chu Yunfan. However, Chu Yunfan was simply dressed. He did not seem to have the ability to get into the focus classes of the martial arts stream. Was he really hiding his capabilities? At that moment, they all felt that their worldview had been turned upside down, especially Lu Silin. At that moment, she felt a little flushed. Earlier, she had just been showing off her son so obviously. She herself knew what she had done. She now felt a little flushed. Suddenly, Chu Yunfei, who was originally too lazy to speak, suddenly took a step forward. Then, he put a hand on Chu Yunfan's shoulder. Chu Yunfan did not back down. He shrugged slightly and the hand that Chu Yunfei had placed on Chu Yunfan's shoulder immediately slid down. Everyone saw this scene. Other than Chu Qingxian, they were all experts. Once they made a move, they would know whether or not it was true. Chu Yunfan's casual move just now had let them know that Chu Yunfan's cultivation level was not fake. It was even slightly higher than Chu Yunfei's. A look of shock flashed across Chu Yunfei's eyes. Although he had just shrugged, both his speed and strength had reached perfection. If it had been according to the memories of the second brother in his mind, Chu Yunfan would not have been able to avoid it. Only now did he finally believe that Chu Yunfan had really passed the entrance exam for the martial arts stream. This made him look at Chu Yunfan in a new light. Okay, why are we still outside? Big brother and sister in law have already arrived. Father and mother should be waiting anxiously as well. Let's go in. Chu Wenqing stepped forward and said without batting an eyelid. He immediately gave everyone a way out of this strange atmosphere. Yes, yes, yes. Big brother and sister in law should have been waiting anxiously for a long time. Chu Wenxuan said hurriedly. Yes, let's go in early. Lu Silin also quickly said. The two families entered Meiwei. What greeted their eyes was a simple and elegant hall with dozens of big tables throughout the hall. At the end of the hall, there was a spiral staircase leading to the second floor. Besides the hall on the first floor, there were private rooms on the second and third floors. Although there were no private rooms, Meiwei boosted a lot of guests. It was very difficult to book a big table. Usually, they had to book a table 1 month in advance before a big table could be reserved. Not long after the two families entered the hall, they immediately heard a greeting. Wenqing, Wenxuan. Over here. Everyone's eyes looked over and saw 4 people waiting at a large table. One of them was a middle-aged man with a face similar to Chu Wenqing and Chu Wenxuan. He was waving his hand. Chapter 50. Shocking the relatives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 50. Shocking the relatives. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Chu Yunfan took a look. The person who greeted him was none other than his uncle, Chu Wendong. Among the three brothers of the Chu family, Chu Yunfan's uncle had made the greatest achievement. He was the current director of a government department of the city. Although his position was not very high, he was no small fry either. He had a vague air of authority. The middle-aged woman beside Chu Wendong had the temperament of a noblewoman. She was Chu Yunfan's aunt, Yan Bing. The two old men and women sitting at the center were his grandfather, Chu Dinghua, and his grandmother, Kong Ningxin. They both looked like were in their 60s or 70s. But because of their cultivation bases, they looked young. In fact, both of them were over 90 years old. The two families approached the big table and sat down. "Sons, what took you so long?" Old Madam Chu asked. "Mom, aren't we all working people? We immediately came here after changing our clothes." Chu Wenqing quickly explained. At the same time, he glanced around the table and asked, "Where's Yuntian? Why isn't he here?" Yuntian just passed the division exam and entered the focus class of the martial arts stream. He went out to celebrate with his classmates and has not come back. It's quite tiring to travel back from Donghua. Old Madam Chu answered after a pause. How tiring could it be? Transportation is so convenient now. It takes less than half an hour to get here from Donghua. Lu Silin could not help but grumble. Exactly. This is his birthday party and he's not even here. Yang Yayun could not help but say. Chu Yunfan and Chu Yunfei also had not expected this. They looked at each other in dismay. They were called here to celebrate Chu Yuntian's birthday, but in the end, Chu Yuntian himself was not present. It's not that Yuntian doesn't want to come back, but you know that although he has teachers at Federal University who are willing to guarantee his admission, he doesn't want to leave his classmates. He has to build good relations with his classmates. After all, he was admitted to the focus class of the martial arts stream. Yan Bing could not help but interject. That's right. With Yuntian's ability, our branch will be dependent on Yuntian's support in the future. When old Madam Chu spoke of Chu Yuntian, she could not help but feel very satisfied. Mom, you can't be so biased. Yunfei also got into the focus class of the martial arts stream. Lu Silin immediately said, unwilling to be outdone. They're both in the martial arts stream. Can Yunfei compare to Yuntian's focus class? Oh right, what about you, Yunfan? Did you get into the martial arts stream? Old Madam Chu changed the topic and turned immediately to Chu Yunfan. Chu Yunfan only said indifferently, I did. The old lady nodded and said, it's good that you got in. Not everyone can get into the focus classes. At this time, Yang Yayun, who had been watching from the side, was about to say something when she saw Chu Wenqing, who was beside her, say, Mom, Yunfan also got into the focus class. Yang Yayun looked at her husband in surprise. He usually did not participate in the conflicts between women. What? He got into the focus class too. Old Madam Chu could not help but be slightly shocked. Although she still favored Chu Yuntian in her heart, it did not mean that she did not take notice of the situation of her two other grandsons. Among them, Chu Yunfan was the most untalented one. Even him getting into the martial arts stream was a surprise. How could he have gotten into the focus class? That's right. Yunfan just got into the focus class. Yang Yayun said proudly. She enjoyed the shock of the crowd. All right, everyone got into the focus class. This is a good thing. Our branch will be relying on them in the future. At this moment, old Master Chu could not help but say. Yuntian didn't come today, but it doesn't matter. Just treat this as a family banquet. Wendong, call for the dishes. Chu Wendong quickly called for the waiter. Clearly, the old man's authority over the family was still very strong. Suddenly, Chu Wendong stood up and said, "Dad, I see my leader over there. I'll head over for a bit." "Go." The old man nodded and said. Chu Wendong's action also attracted everyone's attention. Chu Wendong walked toward a middle-aged man with an attentive expression. No one was not surprised. Just now, Chu Wendong said that the man was a leader of their government. Although, they did not know which department that leader was from. However, it was clear that he had quite the authority. Facing the solicitous Chu Wendong, his expression was very calm. "All of you should learn from Wendong. You should maintain a good relationship with your superiors so that your path will be smoother. That's all I can advise you. The rest is up to you." Chu Dinghua said indifferently. After talking for a while, Chu Wendong finally came back. However, just as everyone was about to withdraw their gazes, another group of people came in. The head of the group was a middle-aged man who had the air of a soldier. The leader, who had looked indifferent just a moment ago, quickly went up to him. His face was attentive, just like the expression Chu Wendong had on earlier. Everyone could not help but feel curious. Who was this person? Only Chu Yunfan was slightly moved because he recognized the identity of the person. It was none other than Lu Yushu's father, Lu Weiguo. He had thought that Lu Yushu's father, Lu Weiguo, was just an ordinary businessman. After all, although the Lu family was rich, there were so many rich people these days. However, he had not expected that the leader of the government department, who even his uncle had to curry favor with, would have to curry favor with him. Chu Yunfan immediately understood that he had underestimated Lu Weiguo. Lu Weiguo spoke with the government official for a while and was about to leave when suddenly, he caught sight of a familiar figure at a large table. He focused his gaze and found that it was none other than Chu Yunfan. He could not help but stop his tracks and walked toward Chu Yunfan. Lu Weiguo strode toward the table of the Chu family members. However, the people of the Chu family did not react. They all thought that Lu Weiguo was just passing by. They did not expect him to finally stop in front of their table. And the person he was facing was none other than Chu Yunfan. "It really is you. I almost missed you. Why? Are you here to eat to celebrate your admission to the focus class of the martial arts stream?" Lu Weiguo asked. With his cultivation, he could naturally see that Chu Yunfan had already entered the Qi Si stage. With such cultivation, it was no problem for him to enter the focus class in an ordinary high school. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Chu Yunfan. The meaning was very obvious. When did Chu Yunfan get acquainted with such a big shot? No matter how they looked at it, these two did not look like they would ever cross paths. "Mr. Lu," Chu Yunfan stood up. Just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Lu Weiguo. "Didn't I tell you before? I'm close to your teacher. You can just call me Uncle Lu. Calling me Mr. Lu is so cold." Lu Weiguo said with a smile. "All right then, Uncle Lu. This is my family. We're here to celebrate my cousin's birthday." Chu Yunfan did not argue and said directly. "I see. How about this? Previously, you helped Yushu. This time, it's all thanks to you that Yushu was able to successfully get into the focus class of Calm Ocean City No. 1 High School. I had been thinking of how to thank you. Since this restaurant happens to be under my name, I'll get them to open a private room for you. And as a thank you gift, all of your expenses tonight will be charged to my account. How about it?" Lu Weiguo said. "A private room at Mayway. It's so hard to get one." At this moment, Chu Yunfei had a feeling that he was truly seeing his cousin for the first time. Mayway Restaurant was famous all throughout Calm Ocean City. Just to get this table, who knew how much time and effort Chu Wendong had spent to get it, not to mention a private room. Now that they were asked to open it for them, it was opened for them. The others were also looking at Chu Yunfan in the same way. However, Yang Yayun, Chu Wencheng, and Chu Qingxian were surprised and honored at the same time. That really isn't necessary, Chu Yunfan said. This is nothing. Don't reject me. Lu Weiguo said. Chu Yunfan's cultivation was no secret in his eyes, so he was even more certain of the judgment he had made back then. Since Chu Yunfan could break through the joint popping stage to the Qi Si stage in such a short period of time, he was obviously not a simple person. His future was limitless. Otherwise, Lu Weiguo would not have personally come to rope him in. After all, Lu Yushu had already paid for Chu Yunfan's help in breaking through. Now, it was just a piece of cake for him to rope in Chu Yunfan. In his opinion, it was not a waste of money. Why not? All right then, on behalf of my family, thank you, Uncle Lu. Chu Yunfan said. Lu Weiguo smiled and said, all right, I'll be leaving now. This is a restaurant. Have yourselves a good time. Lu Weiguo left immediately after saying that. He spared the other members of the Chu family no attention as if he did not want to know them at all. However, it was true that there was no value in making friends with the other members of the Chu family. After Lu Weiguo left, all the eyes of the whole family fell on Chu Yunfan. This person, who usually stayed silent, actually knew such a big shot. I remember now. I've seen his picture on the internet before. He's the CEO of the Lu Group. He's among the top 10 richest people in Calm Ocean. Chu Yunfei slapped his thigh and said. At this moment, Chu Yunfan also realized that the Lu family was much richer than he thought. He had thought they were just ordinary rich men. Yunfan, how do you know Mr. Lu? Chu Dingguo coughed and said. I met him while I was working. Chu Yunfan said vaguely. Everyone wanted to know more, but Chu Yunfan did not give any further explanation. He knew that his family was hungry for more information, but he did not have much of a relationship with Lu Weiguo. He guessed that the reason why Lu Weiguo was being so generous was that Lu Weiguo wanted to win him over. Other than knowing each other through Coach Qin Wu, the two of them did not have much of a relationship at all. Therefore, no matter how his family asked, he insisted that there was no relationship. They just met while they had been working.